There we go. Really need to move that whole box over there. So I guess we should start with some introductions for anybody who's watching. Do we have any watchers yet?
Just a sec. Okay. Hello,
konbanwa. Said that like a terrible pronunciation.
Hi Debiru, hi.
Is that Debu Kingu who's in your
Yeah.
chat right now? Why aren't you showing up on my follow channels? That's weird.
Wait. Hello. How are we doing? Can you hear us? Can you hear music?
I can't hear my music.
Oh no.
But you might be able to hear mine. It depends on whether or not you're watching my channel.
Yay, okay. Good. It's working and I don't have to worry about it. Yay!
Okay, there you are. I can see you on my feed now. Okay, there we go.
Yay!
Look, that's me. I'm on another channel and I'm blinking.
Ah! Okay. How's it going, everyone who is here or who may not be here and is watching a VOD?
Hello. I guess we should do some introductions for people. I'll go first, I guess. Hello, I'm Max, the mysterious android X. You can find me over at Automatic Mech on Twitter. I play primarily Japanese-themed games, and now I do Japanese-themed content because I've got my lovely friend Ven here.
Yay! Hello, I'm Ven. Sylvage, Ven. Thank you for watching, either if you're on Max's channel or my channel. But Sylvage. What? I'm an Oni that is wearing a fox mask. Yay. Yay, I am a creator of my own world called Utsio. Yay, okay.
Yay.
Is that it? I'm non-binary. Yay, okay.
I am a robot. Oh, this is weird because I have my monitor in front of me and I'm not using it for playing video games for once.
Why am I a bench?
We're between two ferns. This is what I explained to you. You're the celebrity, I'm the deranged mental patient who is interviewing you.
Okay.
So what were we going to talk about? We were going to talk about LGBT plus topics for you and Japan topics for me. So let's start off with we've got to start off with the LGBT topics. So I don't know a good starting point for that. What's it like being a non-binary person in Japan, I guess?
Non-binary in Japan. It's kind of annoying just because you don't. Well, even if you bring it up, people don't know the terms yet. Pretty much, like, I don't know how many people even have heard the term non-binary. Like, even on Twitter, I can, like, Google it, and there are definitely people who know the term, but it's probably, like, only, you know, obviously LGBTQIA people. So, in that sense, you know, people... I think, like, the most recent non-binary, like, appearance in Japan was, like, the singer Utada Hikaru. Like, they did, like, music for Kingdom Hearts.
The name rings a bell. I'm like lousy with Japanese music because I'm sort of one of those people who's sort of like, it's not my own language. I can't understand it. I can't make an emotional connection with it. So my Japanese music skills is lacking, but I am trying to improve them. Yeah, but that's how we met, isn't it? That's because I put out a tweet saying hey, I want to make some VTuber friends. Where are the male VTubers? Where are the female VTubers? Where are my trans VTubers? And where are my non-binary VTubers at? And I think you were like the only person to respond.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, ooh, interesting robot, interesting. And then I went and checked you out.
It turns out I wasn't a colossal dirtbag, as one of our previous conversations was exploring. But yeah, and we've been fast friends ever since, because Van is a delightful little cinnamon roll, is what he is. What they are, but so this is the pronouns thing's confusing me again. Sorry.
It's okay. He, him, his.
He, him, they, them. It's fine.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I should always be defaulting to they, them, though, when it's non-binary, because I know my friend Hawk Fangor, go check them out. They use they, them pronouns, and sort of like, because Hawk was probably my first interaction with a non-binary person. I'm sort of like, that's what everyone uses if you're non-binary. But it really is more down to like personal choice, I guess. Just like everything is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I know that there are other people, like some people, I think I've heard them say it pronouns are actually acceptable for them, and then other people get really offended by that. So
yeah, I think I haven't seen people use the it pronoun for like quite a while, like a few years, I think. And I guess that it does come off as being like very impersonal, and you could refer to yourself as that way, like I am an it, but I think coming from another person, it can probably seem pretty derogatory just from the use of the word. It's very dehumanizing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously it's up to the person to feel a certain way about words, so
yeah.
But then if someone asks you to use certain pronouns, I think it's just like polite to do that, just because then, you know, one thing that makes them feel a little bit more welcome, you know, makes a difference.
That's one of the things that always drives me nuts when I hear people are like, I guess I could use it as an example. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there's a controversial of late internet figure called Chris Chan. Christine Weston Chandler, who is transgender by their own definition.
Right.
We won't get into any of the history or anything because otherwise it's that's a if people are interested in finding out about Chris Chan, you can just Google it, or you've already heard about them at this point. But one of the things is sort of like, because this person did something incredibly horrible, people are like, I don't feel the need to use pronouns for this person because that they don't deserve the right. It's like, well, no, you're still talking about a person who wishes to be identified in that particular way, and we still give people, regardless of what they've done, we still address them the way that they want to be identified.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's one of the things that always bugs me when I see people doing that is like there isn't really an argument there. It's like you might as well just call them by a different name entirely, or call them whatever you want, but it defeats the purpose, if that makes sense.
Well then, like, why are you making it into this weird punishment kind of thing? It's just not really, that's not really the point.
Yeah, it's because kind of like I just think it's like an incredibly weak argument. It's sort of like, oh, this person did something bad, so we're just not going to use that. You might as well say this person did something bad, so we won't use their name. Like, yeah, no.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, sorry, that's probably a horribly illustrated point, and we should be talking about I should be talking about the positive aspects of LGBT things.
It's okay. You do what you want. Like, don't worry so much about what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you worry too much about what you're saying, like, it shows. So, like, it's okay. It's okay to, like, you know, say things that are on your mind.
Oh, well, if that's the case, have I got some hot takes for you?
I mean, obviously, like, you know, this is all our individual opinions, so...
Yeah.
And opinions are kind of, like, not necessarily, like, wrong or right. They're just opinions.
But they can be bad.
Yeah. I mean, they can be bad in the sense of, like, they can be hurtful.
Yeah.
So...
That's one of the things is sort of like, I think that most people probably aren't that fussed about... and I say this as a cis robot. I formatted into the body that I had planned, or was planned for me, or whatever you want to call it. But you know, I'm cis. And as someone who's sort of like, oh, I get that. It's like how you want to be. You want to be identified as this one, as you as a person, not as this thing that you happen to have. And again, one of our previous talking points was sort of like, as someone who is by definition neurodivergent, I don't really like to be... I feel it kind of separates me from people if people are like, oh, you have autism, you have special rules applied to you, or you have I think it's like, oh no, I want to be celebrated for my achievements, not for in despite of being neurodivergent, rather than being sort of like look at how well he's doing, because that in England there does seem to be a very big separation between again, at least in my opinion, there seems to be a separation of autism and like other things. Like a person with autism isn't necessarily given the same level of achievement as other people. Like
Right.
you're applauded for doing like the bare minimum in a lot of cases. Yeah, and so I can empathize a lot with people who are born in a way in which they don't see or they don't feel is right to their true lives, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my sort of like 2 cents on it. But
Right.
yeah, so I guess I've been talking a lot, so I need to let you
It's
talk.
fine.
What has been, I don't know if I don't know what you'd call it, your sort of like gender journey. How did you or how would you say you started off on identifying as non-binary? Because I think there is definitely a point at which people start to question the roles in which they're placed.
Well, for me, it was kind of like when I was growing up. When I was a wee little oni, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, people like to label things, not because you know, labeling isn't bad, so I don't see it as a bad thing. It's more like you know, making your life easier kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So of course then one of the first things that people tend to do to like newcomers in this world is like to gender them, right?
Yeah.
And what I really didn't like was how separate things were. Like if you're, you know, a boy, then you have to be like this way, and then if you're a girl, you need to be this way. Like I didn't feel like I fit either. It didn't make sense to me that I'm like being told I need to do this because of like the way that my body is or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when I was little, there weren't like specific terms for how I feel, I think. Like,
yeah.
I didn't grow up with the, you know, term non-binary or like gender queer or gender fluid or anything like that. It was all just like a feeling that I had. And I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people like that. And maybe even now, right? Like just because there's terms now doesn't mean everyone knows them either. So you know, when I was little, I would obviously hang out with whoever I got along with, right? And at the time, like, it tended to be a lot of male friends, I guess, like boys. But then, like, because of the way I am, they'd be like, oh, but you're like supposed to be a girl, then like why are you like hanging out with us, kind of thing. And I'm like, why not? You know, like what does that have to do with anything? Like if you like hanging out with someone, does it matter? Well,
yeah, I don't personally have that story because I was a weird autistic kid as a child. But I do. One of my friends from university, the way that they've described their experience to me, or at least has been the impression I've been given by them, is it's a very similar story. It's sort of like, well, some people just don't care for the roles in which they live, or the not that sounds terrible. The way in which you are physically here on this planet is pretty inconsequential to a person's likes and dislikes, I think. And this person in particular was sort of like had a very similar story to you. Sort of like they primarily had male friends, and they would hang out with exclusively guys, and they didn't like girl stuff. They liked sort of goth culture, which is pretty, I would say, well, gender queer, or it's not a spectrum. It's all encompassing black from the goth community, but it's a black that accepts everyone and accepts people for the different sort of for who they are. So yeah, I totally get where you're coming from. It's sort of like I just know where you're coming from with that.
Right. Yeah. And so, growing up and what they call in human terms, like teenageness or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it kind of really got to me, I think. Like, it was like, well, I mean, on top of being like, non-binary and all that, like, I'm also, I mean, I'm kind of still questioning, but I'm pretty bisexual. So like, I was interested in like, a girl, and then that didn't really work out, and I was kind of like in this space in my brain. I was like, what am I like? Am I weird? Am I not supposed to be here? Like, where do I fit, in terms of society? Like, what am I, But yeah, I basically kind of took like psychological classes where, they talk about this stuff, and then I was like, yeah, who am I? Where do I come from? What do I do?
Yeah. That again, a surprisingly similar story to also like my neurodivergent story. So yeah, I like there's definitely a level of yeah. You could just replace the word non-binary with neurodivergent there, and I'm sort of like, yeah, that's basically my life story. But yeah, so your experience in general has been, would you consider it a negative experience, or not necessarily in coming like, oh, I started off as this one thing, and then here I am now, and it's been terrible the whole way, but I'm happier now? Or would you say that you are still sort of undergoing your journey, as it were?
I guess I'm pretty happy with who I am. Well, this is kind of interesting, but like the past year or so, I've been kind of like, does it really matter what other people think? Like, at least like about yourself, I mean, I think you should have like some sort of like outer perspective in terms of like how you present yourself, to the extent that if you're doing something in a way that's like hurting other people, sure, like you need to like look at yourself a little bit better. But if it's something like, gender, I'm like, why do I need to care so much about what other people think? Like, I like what I like, right? Like, I like dressing the way that I do. I like presenting the way that I do. Like, it makes me feel good. It makes me more positive. And I know there's a lot of people out there who are probably like, well, like, you are in a specific body, and so you must be a certain way because, I don't know, because my feels or something, right?
Yeah.
But then it's like, well, you're living your life, right? That's not my life. And like, we all have like a responsibility to our own feelings, like, but then like it's kind of strange to get upset at someone else because of the way that they are, and then like blame them for how you feel about them, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I need to explain that better, but what I'm trying to say is, now I used to be really, really worried about other people.
Yeah.
And how other people see me, and like the way that I talk or like carry myself. Because like I would notice that I don't fit in anywhere. Like, I'm always kind of strange. Like, at least like wherever I go, either because of like, the way that I look, or like the way that I dress, or the way that I talk, I would kind of stand out. So more recently, I'm like, isn't that fine? Like, why does that matter?
Yeah. I think almost in a way it's like a product of, I guess, the world that we live in, that we're so used to the idea of conformity. Like, within our workplaces, we all dress very similar, or we dress identical because we have to wear a uniform, or even in like a place of business, what is the name of it? Very 1 second whilst I get a book from my shelf. So there's a particular Japanese yokai that I think is relative here. It is the Noperabo.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, scholars sort of like think it's this, that they first showed up in this idea of when Japanese cities were becoming much bigger, and people were becoming more affluent, so people were dressing very similar. At the same time, there were these big crowds of people in the street that people began to lose their sense of identity. And so I think it is kind of like this Naparabo syndrome, where people, the more similar people that we see, people similar to ourselves, the less accepting of people who stand out we become, because it becomes kind of almost like that sort of like, oh, either whether it would be like a sort of, well, what's so special about this guy, or if it's sort of like, what's his deal? Is he gonna cause trouble or something?
Right.
Sort of thing. I think that can be the case for it. So it's like, even though everyone should be like, I remember when I took a trip to Japan, and I visited Harajuku.
Yeah.
And Harajuku is kind of like the opposite of that. It is very much everybody can stand out and do their own thing. I remember there was like I guess he must have been, I guess he was, they, I should say. I won't I'll try not to misgender them, but this individual was probably about 60 years old and dressed head to toe in like bright pink, purple street fashion, like very kawaii culture, and had a boombox blasting out just like the loudest sort of like I think it might have been Kiari Pamu.
Yeah, Kiari Pamu.
Yeah. They were just blasting it out and then shouting at the top of their lungs, sort of like, oi, 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 just chanting along with it. And I was like, you know what? You do you, buddy. Whatever it is, you're clearly living your best life. Nobody could take that away from you. If this is what you like to do, you do it. You're not hurting anyone. Maybe might be because being a slight of a public nuisance with music that loud, but you know what? You rock on. And it's like, if society was more like that person, it might be a wackier and less conformist society, but I think it would be a better society, if that makes sense. Because the people would be happier. They would be happier with themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think at least with like humans, it's
because as we can clearly tell, neither one of us is human.
Yeah, right. And we're not human, so you know, if you're a human, please take this all with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But
I'm a robot. He's an Oni in a fox mask.
But yeah, I mean, there does seem to be like historically this tendency for humans to want to conform and then like in a way find like this like happiness within conformity, and I think that's valid. It's just like if your conformity is like suppressing things, it's not, you know? And so that's like the difficult part, is like how much, you know, really, you know, time to conquer Venworld. Like, I mean, I still have issues. Well, they're not issues. Like, little things do bother me still about the way that I am. But at the same time, like, some people find happiness in this, like, feeling of oneness that they get, I think, if they wear similar things to other people, or, like, if they, like, speak a certain way, or if they, you know, present a certain way. But then, at the same time, the issue really comes from, like, how people want to belong to certain groups, and then when groups have this, like, weird animosity towards each other, that's, like, really the issue, right?
Yeah.
Or, like, one group will be like, hey, that group isn't good enough in our opinion, like, they're bad. And it's like, no. I mean, I don't know what philosophy people go from, and that's like really the big issue, is a lot of people aren't really on the same wavelength in terms of, you know, when they're trying to discuss. I feel like no one starts off with like terminology. But yeah, I feel like people would be happier if, like, you know, if someone wants to be different, if people just let them be different, you know? You know, and like, fortunately or unfortunately, like, people can control how they act or react to someone. So that's like the other thing, is like, I might stand out wherever I go, and that's just how it is. And I've just kind of come to accept that. But if me standing out somehow upsets someone, I can't really control that, because that's like on them. Unless it's like the way that I'm acting specifically towards them. You know what I mean? Like, I can change the way that I interact with them, but I can't, like, I'm not gonna just suddenly change my whole life or the way that I am just to fit one person's needs, right?
Yeah, no, it does feel very much like because I worked for a long while in a pretty boomer-filled environment, up until I quit that job a year or two ago.
What do you mean by boomer?
So people of the previous generation, so this generation's parents, as it were. So people who were born baby boomers. You never heard boomers?
No, I know the term. I just want you to define it.
Okay. So the primary workforce was people sort of within this specific generation. So they would have been like 45 to 60 age group.
Okay.
And they, because of the place that it was a very, very generalized populace of customers. So like you would get people just coming in to grab stuff for their homes, because it was a sort of like a home store. It wasn't like a supermarket or a convenience store. It was a store where you would buy stuff for your garden or for your house and so on and so forth. I don't know what like the term is. Home department store, I guess, is probably what you would define it as. But yeah, the workforce there was very traditional, northern sort of, because unless you can't tell, I'm from the north of England, and they would be, there is a specific type of Britishness that I can't stand, and that is the politeness to the point of being insulting. And I remember the sort of like, there was a person who would occasionally come in. You wouldn't see them very regularly, maybe once or twice a year, but you could tell it was the same customer. And they would come in and they would pick up like their Christmas tree, and they were, to my knowledge, transgender. And the specific they would sort of like, oh, would you mind taking a picture of me with the tree so I can see what it looks like, sort of like comparison wise, for whatever reason. And the people in sort of like that age group would oblige, as you would any customer. But then as soon as that customer leaves, it was get a load of that, you know, misuse of pronouns,
Right.
and various slurs, because the T word is not a slur in the UK apparently. So yeah, I forget where we're going with this, but sort of like, or where I was going with this. But there is definitely sort of like an aspect of, well, what was harmful about that? That person did nothing other than ask you to take a picture of them with something they bought for their own reasons. But no, everything was like associated with, you never know what they'll be wanting to do with that photo. It's like a picture of themselves fully dressed with a Christmas tree. Like it really does seem to, like, whenever a question of sort of like a person presents itself in the UK, presents themselves as something alternative to how they were assigned as a gender, it's got to be inherently sexual.
Right. Yeah. It's weird. I mean, it's weird and it's also not weird, because I think people misunderstand the fact that your self-identification, you know, you as whatever gender you want to be, is not the same thing, and it doesn't define your sexuality. So, but then, like, a lot of people, I think, connect it together, because a lot of it does have to, you know, it comes from, like, probably the majority is cisgendered, right? And then when you tend to be cisgendered, like, the majority probably are straight, or at least like likes the opposite gender or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that comes from that, and not necessarily like it's bad that people do that. It's just that there's this like complete misunderstanding or disregard that some people, just because they identify as one gender, doesn't necessarily mean that they like the opposite or whatever that is. So
yeah, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, it's funny you should bring up the sort of like, oh, the people like the opposite gender. Did you know? Do you know that the term heterosexual was invented as a way of defining a person's over attraction to a person of the opposite sex? It was a medical term that was coined for people who were way too horny on main in the 1800s.
What? Interesting.
Yeah.
1800s.
Yeah, it was probably, I think it was the late 1800s. And yeah, apparently it was never used before. It was just sort of like, oh, everyone was very polite and respectful, and anyone who was just like slightly more attracted to the opposite sex was like considered a sexual deviant. It's like, that woman's angles are particularly nice. It's like, take him to the insanatorium.
It seems to be the case that some cultures have had that weird period in time in history where they're like super against sex. And then like at other times it's like there's this like breakthrough, or it used to be the fact that there was a lot more sexual, like, not activity necessarily, but like expression.
Yeah.
But then it's like it got repressed somehow because of some other, you know, historical event, or like coming into contact with other cultures or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you should mention that, because I was speaking to a friend the other day about how when I went to Japan and also Barcelona, I was like blown away that sexual expression is way more acceptable in like other countries than it is in the UK or the US. And it was shocking to me, even as someone who is, you know, I consider myself pretty accepting of both other cultures and sort of like, you know, people doing sex work as however they if that's how you want to earn your money, that's fine by me. You find your truth, or however you want to put it. It's like, that's okay with me. Legalize it. And as long as it's regulated and everything's safe and people are making money, who can complain? But like, as a British person abroad, like, I was like shocked. I was like, just like, even like, just like people having like novelty items that, unless you went to a very specific part of Britain at a very specific part of time, part of the year, you and even then you would have to be like, I know exactly where I'm looking for this one thing. Like, you would find those just everywhere else. Like, there was human anatomy everywhere. Let's just say, and how just sort of blasé it was in those instances that I've been, and I was like, good lord, could they show that? Could they show those things? That part of me was like, of course they can. It's their own country. They have their own cultural understanding of these things. I, as a British person, would be shocked by it, because Britain is a horrible, prudish country where we eat grey food and live under grey skies constantly. And so you've said you've visited London twice, haven't you?
Yes.
How, as a foreigner, what was your experience, would you say? Were you like particularly young, so you can't remember it that well, or what do you remember of, like, as a person coming to England?
I'm pretty sure I was kind of little, so I don't remember a lot. I think one of the things that I do remember is because I felt a little stress from like, the reason why I was there in the first place was because of my parents. But the thing was that they wanted to go to certain places and they wouldn't accept little ones. So I remember it not being like the most friendly place for kids, I think. And then also that people were relatively like unwelcoming.
Yeah, it is. Well, this is like a side topic, but I've also noticed that there's a weird amount of anti-Japanese rhetoric within the UK.
Interesting.
One of the interactions that always sticks out to me was sort of like I was at work one time, and I was learning Japanese by myself at lunch. Had like two other colleagues in the room, or one other colleague who was like sort of like just reading in peace. I was like learning from my Japanese textbook, so like here's how particles work, which are a nightmare. But the third person comes in, sees that I'm learning Japanese, and immediately is just like, the Japanese are a bunch of... And I was like, geez, where did that come from? It was like, you see me learning Japanese and you decide to bring up the history of World War II. It's like, I'm very much sort of like, history is written by the winners, and Japan certainly did some very terrible things during World War II, but England was also responsible for like several genocides during World War II. But funnily enough, because they happened in like Africa, we just don't mention them for some reason.
Yeah.
And like I was just sort of like, why is there just like this bizarre hatred for the Japanese? Like, I could almost understand it like if it was the Germans or the French maybe, because there are these historic connections to these things that we've had conflicts with before. Obviously, you had the Napoleonic Wars, and we had World War I against primarily Germany. But like, England had very little interaction with Japan during World War II, like to my knowledge, at least how I was educated, which is let's just say the data banks on British history are vague and sketchy, and they don't tend to talk about the bits in which they weren't, favorable for the British.
Yeah.
But there is, again, there's this weird sort of anti-Japanese rhetoric I noticed. It's sort of like, why? Why is this?
I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just like one of those things where people just want to have this like bad guy in their life somehow, and then it can be anyone or anything as long as it makes them feel better. Okay, that sounds really mean. But yeah, regarding history, I'm really bad with history, even though I'm a 700 years and couple whatever years old.
Yeah.
When you like,
well, that's only world history, isn't it? Like, you could tell me hello Major Craft, we got personally by chat. Let's see, they're a little bit too soft, are they? Okay. Audio output capture, let's try ramping up. Let's try ramping up Ven's audio a bit. Hopefully that's better. Let me know if you want to improve it. But I'm doing good, Major Craft. We're chatting with Ven. We're discussing all kinds of stuff. We've gone through what it's like being LGBT in Japan. We're now talking about how racist England is. Racist and transphobic. Ooh, what a winner.
You could kind of say that about any place, honestly, I feel like.
Yeah, well, obviously nationalism is kind of this thing that has been on the rise a lot lately. I don't know about how Japan, because Japan's sort of like historically always been conservative, pretty conservative.
I think when people like conformity, they tend to be conservative.
Yeah.
So there is definitely this like feeling of like you need to think a certain way, or at least, present a certain way. So yeah. I don't know about so I think Japan's racism is kind of difficult. It definitely exists, but it's a lot different than like Western countries, I'm pretty sure.
I wouldn't say that I experienced racism in Japan when I visited there, but I had like a really short trip. I was there for like 12 days, I think, in total. So chances are you're not likely going to get some sort of like someone shouting racial slurs at you in the street when you're a tourist. But as someone who's like heavily into Japanese culture and learning just more about Japan as a country, I would be amiss if I said that like and as someone who wants to move to Japan, I was like there's not this factor of not isolationism, but almost a there's very much the presence of like you will always feel like an outsider. That's one of the things that a lot of people talk about, even ones who have lived for years in Japan. They say it's like, yeah, you're never really accepted.
I think it's definitely one of those things where if you find the right community, I think it's not too bad. But I do know that like I have friends who are mixed race, who have been to or lived in Japan, and they have their own different, experiences. Like a lot of people that I know who are relatively light-skinned, like light-toned skin, tend to say like they've had like an okay time in Japan. And then like it's also like your personality. So like the one friend that really likes traveling that I have, they are really outgoing, so they kind of go out of their way to like talk to people. And so I feel like that probably also helps them kind of connect with other people. But then like if you're more reserved, plus like if you're, if your skin tone is relatively darker, people do have this kind of way of like avoiding, not because like you're bad or you've done anything wrong, but just because you're different, right?
Yeah.
So it's weird. And I mean, I guess in that sense there is this like unfortunate like prejudice. I learned this prejudice and I forgot. There's prejudice and then another term, and one means like you're actually acting on it and the other is like just your attitude.
Prejudice would be attitude in that case, because prejudice isn't necessarily the actual sort of like errata of the word is pre and judice, and judice comes from judgment. So you're prejudging someone, so you have this preconceived idea of them.
Yeah. I think acting on them is the ism one.
Racism?
I think.
But if it's an ism, it's usually bad.
Right.
That's the rule for English.
Right. Well, what I was trying to say is basically, well, the other thing is some people are like openly, like pretty happy to see someone who's not from Japan.
Mm.
So there are people out there who are like really welcoming. They're like, hey, like, you know, you're from a different place, like, you know, want to get to know you, or like, you know, if you need help, like, ask me and all that stuff. I think there's some people who go up to English speakers to like kind of practice their English sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah. Well, as someone who comes from a primarily like homogenous sort of area, so like you won't see a person of like a different skin tone unless you're primarily within like a city center, and I'm pretty far from the city centers. It can be sort of like, I can understand where like a prejudice will exist, because you're mentally so used to this idea of a specific type of person living around you, and you see nothing else, and you might not even like those people, but you're so used to these people who are like yourself that you immediately just have like this gut reaction of like, that's someone different. What are they doing here? Why are they... And it like it boggles your mind. So I can almost understand where it comes from as like just from a standpoint of like, that's a weird thing over there.
Right.
Like anyone's reaction would be if they saw something that was sort of like different to their normal routine.
Yeah.
But obviously, like when you factor in like sort of like these inherited sort of ideas, like I said before, like people who have had or have had relatives who have had negative experiences with a person of a specific nationality, because say they were at war, that's where it starts to cross the line, because you have to get to the point of saying like, okay, this person is getting a second-hand knowledge of a culture rather than like having their own experience with it. Yeah.
You know, I think it's okay to be not well, anyone's gonna have like the initial reaction that you have to anything that's different is like gonna be there, right? Like if you might be surprised, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. Like you can be surprised if something's different. It's just that if you... Well, because I think that's kind of like a basic instinct thing, is like you don't know what it is, so you're kind of surprised. You need to like figure out if it's gonna be somehow harmful to you or not. It's like the emotions tend to come first, and then your rationale kicks in, right? So like it's okay to be afraid of something initially, but then like the thing that makes Prejudice so bad is just like the fact that it like colors your vision towards something. So the moment you know, like instead of being like, oh, I'm gonna be kind of neutral to whatever I'm reacting to, like you lose that neutrality, right? And then even though if you were to stay neutral and just like observe, like maybe it's not actually like anything bad or anything like wrong, but then like you just kind of let your emotions take over, and that's what happens when you act on it, right?
Well, and like this is a weird comparison, but like it's kind of like how I hate tagines. But so if you don't know what a tagine is, it's a Middle Eastern dish, kind of like a stew, but it's done in like a specific type of pot, and then you eat out of the pot, or you serve it out of the pot. But I absolutely hate them, but not because, excuse me, that was a row belch. It's like, well, why do I hate tagines? And it's like, hang on. So I've never been to the Middle East. I've never been to a Middle Eastern restaurant, but I've had tagines prepared for me by servitor drones. And what they're doing there is they're just taking the idea of the tagine. They're not actually preparing it. They don't have any history preparing it. They don't have a history in Middle Eastern cooking, but they made this tagine, and it was perfectly edible, but they're using spices from like the supermarket, and they're using a recipe that was probably put together by a white person perspective of a Middle Eastern dish they had in the restaurant like 2 years ago. And what you're getting is like this second-hand version of something that is not the real authentic version.
Right.
And that's how I feel it can be. It's like you're getting someone else's perspective when it comes to prejudice, because that prejudice isn't informed by like your own experiences. It's usually informed by someone else's.
Well, I guess
that's why I hate Middle Eastern food.
What?
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's very much sort of like whenever it's stuff like prejudice, it is almost always like secondhand.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, when you were growing up, if the people around you gave you a certain type of, glasses, and then they were like, don't take them off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, that's what you grew up with, and then isn't it like that where, like, if you take it off, there's, like, a different perspective and world, but then you have those glasses on and you don't notice, so...
Yeah, it is sort of like a rose tinted, well, not rose tinted, but I know what you mean. It's definitely sort of like
perspective.
People are like, yeah. People would be like, you'll be safe if you don't take off your conspiracy glasses, but then you take them off and you're like, well, it's no different. You just stop looking at it through your way. Yeah. But yeah, there's lots to, I guess what I want people to take away from this like conversation is like, get out there, do things. Don't don't
talk
just
to people that are different from you.
Yeah.
But not in like a not in like the way that some people go, like, don't attack them when they haven't done anything.
Yeah, I would say it's like okay to be curious about things. Like, don't be afraid to like go out there and be like, I'm really interested in this one specific facet of someone's culture, but do you want to ask them about it? But I don't want to say just Google it, because you can find out about something by reading about like a topic or a thing within a culture that you want to know more about. But always, if you can, try and find someone to talk to about it. Like if you know someone who's has a real life experience with that thing, you get a much better picture of that thing, rather than say like having a preconceived notion about it. Because that's kind of why I've wanted to make Japanese friends with people for so long, and now I have Ven, is because I love Japan. I've loved it since I was a proto form, and the thing is though is that we have in England, you have this very specific picture of Japanese culture, and it's basically done from two cities. It's either, well, three: Tokyo, Kyoto, or Hiroshima. Maybe sometimes they'll talk about Osaka or Nagasaki if they're feeling generous or they've got extra time. And those aren't, I think you'd agree with me, Van, but those aren't good pictures of like Japan as a whole country, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they're like so specific. Like Tokyo is obviously Tokyo. It's this huge city that is basically like New York in a lot of ways, where it's a melting pot of different cultures, but primarily lifted up through a Japanese lens, as opposed to Kyoto, which is a very traditional Japanese city. And then you get Osaka, which is like very much similar to sort of like Osaka. It's almost like a representation of Osakan sort of like psychology in a way, because it's very bombastic and everything's sort of like, hey, look at our sign, it's the biggest sign, we've got the biggest sign, you seen our sign? Don't look at his sign, look at our sign. See this? It's a big octopus. It's an octopus eating a takoyaki. What is that? That's cannibalism, that is. And then I think, honestly, the best representation of Japanese culture that I saw was in Hiroshima. And that is a bit, I feel conflicted in a way, because Hiroshima as a Westerner is something to be silently revered. Like it was this moment where the world changed. We dropped the Allied forces dropped a nuclear weapon onto a city of primarily civilians, killed thousands, and we have this perspective of like, this city is a monument to what we did, in a way. Like, look at how powerful we are. And obviously it set the stage for America becoming like the biggest country in the world, most powerful country in the world. But you don't hear about Hiroshima as a city. You don't hear about how it was rebuilt. You don't hear about how when you walk around the city, it's just like any other city in the world. It's a really nice city. And maybe that is because it was rebuilt, or because there was this. It's living in the aftermath of this huge, monumental, world-changing event.
Right.
And it does have this single remnant in the form of the dome that is there to remind us of what happened.
Yep.
But when I went around the city, I was like, really, this is the city with the dome. This is the thing that everyone has been so monumentally reverent of. Like, this is the point on the planet in which we showed our power to its fullest extent. It's like people don't seem to really care that much in the city. It's like, and again, maybe that's because they live in the city. They're the people who have to go about their daily lives and do their shopping and go to the bathroom. But there's certainly like that was the best representation of Japanese life. I felt like you could go to the other cities and they were very touristy and there was things, but the night that we arrived in Hiroshima, there was a festival going on. It was just like a summer festival. It wasn't anything in particular, and it wasn't planned that we were going to get there. It was just, oh, hey, check this out. It happens to be the first night of like summer Matsuri, I think is the term.
Right.
And it was just sort of like, shit, this is a real city, isn't it? This is what Japan actually looks like. This is what the real Japan is to me. And I was like, I guess even sort of like this is what Japan is actually about. It's about people just like living their lives. Because they're human beings. And that was a very like sort of like formative moment for my sort of like psychology. Because there was a point in my life where I was traveling down like a very dark path of well, the slippery slope of the alt-right, as it's known. And there you could get some. A lot of people have gone down that road, and they never leave their houses, and they become just essentially crazy people who are mad at everyone and just want the world to burn. And I was like, there was a point in my life I was like that. But then one day something happened to me, and I was set in this chain of events, and I eventually, I went outside. I touched grass, as it were. And the result was I did the thing that I've always wanted to do. And at the same time, I saw the world for how it was, that it was this big, exciting place that you could go around and learn more about. I came back, and that's been my goal ever since, to get back to Japan. We gotta go back to Japan, Ben. It's about your kids.
Well, apparently, at least like in the next month or so, if you're from, I actually don't know about the UK, but if you've vaccinated yourself with either the Moderna, the Pfizer, or the one that starts with an A,
AstraZeneca.
Yes, those people can skip the 3-day quarantine.
Yes, I've got my antivirus software.
So, but everyone else, unfortunately, and also depending on where they come from, might have to endure a 3-day hotel stay, or the 6-day hotel stay, or 10 days hotel stay right next to the airport. And then
so we can send you back where you came from, just in case.
Well, obviously, if you have it, there's like a whole other thing that you'll have to do, and you'll probably be put in a hospital or something, or maybe just like
Hmm.
I think there might be like an extra facility for people who have it. But yeah, then you'll have to like in total you have to kind of be quarantined for 14 days. So like on top of the stay at the hotel, you'll have to do like 14 days of like checking in with this app that they give you. Like if you go to Japan now, you'll need a smartphone that connects to like location services in Japan. And that means like you'll either have to get like a smartphone, like I think they let you rent one now.
So you would need like a Japanese smartphone.
Yeah, or like a way for like I know some people have phones where you can switch out SIM cards. So you might have to buy a SIM card in Japan if you can do that, and if your phone allows for that. But that's what you should expect if you're gonna be planning a visit to Japan anytime soon. It's not fun, but the hotel stays are interesting. So they'll put you in like a tiny business hotel. It's like if you come with family, I think you can ask for like the same room, but I would say no if you don't have anything to worry about, because the rooms are really tight. You should also be aware that I mean, they do give you food, but you won't be able to step out of the hotel or like your room. So you have internet access, you have TV access to like Japanese channels, you'll have a bath and a bathroom and all that, but yeah, 3 or 6 or 10 days you'll have to do that. Unless you have the 3 vaccines. Like, apparently anything outside of those 3, you still might have to do the hotel stuff.
That's interesting, because like how far along with the vaccination progress is Japan, would you say?
I think the
one of the
news
things that
says like 70%.
70%. So have you been vaccinated yourself?
Yes.
So the way that it's sort of like shown in like on NHK, which is the only place you can really get Japanese news in the UK, it's had been sort of like presented as being like a very slow uptake, and even when there was a lot of younger people trying to get the vaccine, they were being sort of like told, no, you have to wait, you have to get all the old people done first, which was similar to what happened in the UK. But so maybe it's just a case of like seeing it from another perspective, like, oh, that's happening in another country. But it's interesting to hear sort of like the take.
Yep. I think the reason why they're not accepting other vaccines, not that they've actually said any, like, or, you know, they have, like, the government hasn't specified why they won't accept other vaccines. But I think it's just because those 3 are the only ones that you can get as a Japanese citizen.
Yeah.
So then I'm assuming they're thinking like, well, it's safe, and then, you know, there's data for Japanese people for these vaccinations, so it's okay. But then like anything else, well, you know, I guess whatever.
Yeah.
Which doesn't make sense to me, but, you know, I'm not the Japanese government, so whatever.
Yeah. Then why aren't you responsible for everything? So we've talked about some pretty heavy stuff. Let's try lightening the mood. How about does anyone have any questions in the audience of the approximately 3 people watching, whether it's for me or for Van? I believe we've got at least one Japanese watcher. Let's open the floor to just some questions for now. It could be on anything that we've discussed, or if you just have like a general question, like how do I reset my Wi-Fi?
How do I chat? I mean, I do, I have a world I control, and that's Utsushio, but Utsushio doesn't have COVID because everyone actually, works together.
That's a nice world.
I know, right? Because I made it. Yeah, and yokai have a lot of, years in their lives to be able to learn a lot, so they help a lot with, like, figuring out what's best for everyone.
There's like one yokai that I'm always sort of like, that is the most disgusting thing I've ever heard of in my life. And I'm getting this from like a book that doesn't have all the yokai in it, whereas it's oh yeah, here he is. Here they are. Because it could be a woman, could be non-binary yokai. Akaname.
Yeah, I figured you were gonna say that one.
It's like, it literally translates as like bathtub liquor.
Yeah. Aka is like whatever gets left on like bathtubs after you've like bathed.
Because
it's like
this is one of the things that I'm sort of like, that confuses me with Japanese language, because aka is red, aka is baby, aka is bathtub filth.
Well, that's because there's kanji.
There's kanji, and there's like slightly different variations on like pronunciation, isn't there? Because that's one of the things that's been catching me out when I've been doing Duolingo, is sort of like how Oji-san and Oji-san are like one character away from 2 different things. Because you've got grandpa with Oji-san, which is the extended version, and then you've got Oji-san with his uncle. So I'm sort of like, damn it, keep forgetting that bit.
Yep. Yeah, it's funny. I think that gets to people when they're learning Japanese at first, so they're like, wait, I thought that was a different word, and I'm like, it is, but it also isn't. And then some words can be names, and the names might sound like other things, and Speaking of language, that's like a really good way to learn about someone's culture.
Yeah, I've been looking at this a lot, and it's sort of like the language really does sort of like give you a way better perspective of sort of like a culture than necessarily like a person from that culture. At least from an academic standpoint, because a person from a culture can just sort of like live their life in one specific place and never move out of like I literally knew someone who lived their entire life in the village I grew up in. Like they were born in that village and they died in that village a couple of weeks ago. They never went further than like the next town over. So I mean, like English is sort of like a tour of English history in a way, because to quote like Neil Gaiman, English is the language equivalent of a mugger who knocks you out in a dark alleyway, rifles through your pockets, and just keeps the bits of change that he likes. He doesn't take he doesn't take your wallet, he just takes the things that he wants out of your pockets. And it's like, yeah, that's about right. We just take words from things and absorb them into the language.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that how... Like, it's kind of... It's not obviously everything, but I think language does a big deal in terms of, like, being welcome or not to other cultures and stuff.
Oh, yeah. Like, if you can speak English even moderately well in England, it's you're considered much more highly. Like, the fluency of your English is definitely sort of like how you are. It's a gauge of how intelligent you are, how intelligent you are in a lot of ways, which is kind of fucked up, but it is nonetheless sort of like how present it is in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like, what I like about language is that there's, like, at first I used to be like, why can't there be a universal language that everyone can speak and use? You know? Because that would make things so much easier. But then if you think about it, the reason why languages are all different is because you're in a different place. Like, you're in a different place, you grow up with different things, you have other people around you who are not in, like language is shaped by the, like, surrounding environment, right?
Yeah.
So, of course it can't be the same in every place. But, like, what makes that a good thing is that if you do know different languages, then, like, you realize how different someone might see the world.
Yeah. That's interesting you should say that, because I've started looking at learning Hawaiian because I really like Hawaiian culture. It's super interesting to me, because they were like one of the first sort of like or the people who would go on to be the Hawaiian people, sort of ancestral wise, were some of the first explorers who like explored the world and had incredible navigation skills. And as a result of that, sort of like their languages spread to what I suspect is, or at least became formative in a lot of modern Asian languages, because if you look at the two, they have very similar structures, although Hawaiian's like has way less words. Hawaiian has like a relatively small but complex use of words, and it's super interesting, and I love learning more about it.
Hi, Mercury. So one of the things I like about different languages is like the where there are 4 seasons that are distinct. There's a lot of words surrounding seasons. So, for example, Japan has all 4 seasons at the moment. But what that means is maybe you're familiar if you've studied a little bit of Japanese history before. So Japanese people used to write poems for just like in lieu of love letters and stuff.
Yeah.
And those are all like, so haiku are all like only like they all have to involve season language. So you know how I think if you're in like English speaking countries, you might just think like haiku are supposed to have like the syllables.
Yeah, there's usually the first thing that you learn is that like there are poems with like a very specific syllabic structure to them.
Yeah, but
in fact, that's pretty much all you learn about them.
Yeah, but like the real haiku that people like the real rules for it is that you have to have something seasonal in it. So
that's interesting.
There are lots of ways to describe like each season, and it's just kind of interesting. But it makes sense because, you know, the seasons are distinct, so in a way every season has specific characteristics. Like, it's either like the way that, you know, leaves are on trees, or maybe it's like snow, or even like the way that animals are, you know, like, because in some seasons there's like these types of fish or like birds or whatever, in other seasons there aren't. But every, like, there's a lot of seasons and like words that describe seasons, and it's like, I think I read something about other cultures where there's like a ton of blue in their environment, but then like each blue has like a different name or a word for them because it's like all shades of blue, but then they can like distinguish between each type of blue.
Yeah, it's kind of like the alleged, I don't know how true this is, but there's the rumored 50 words for snow in the Inuit language.
Oh yeah, something like that too. But that's because that's just like the environment that they live in, and they need to refer to things because it's like specifically important to their culture or their living, right?
Yeah, because in England we've probably only got like 2 words for snow, really. So like 2 terms for like snow in particular. It would be like sort of like we have snow for just general snow, and then we have blizzard for like snow when it's like anything heavier than regular snow.
Right.
But the point there would be that like that's only because we differentiate between 2 forms of snow. But like, yeah, how would you describe like a particular type of snow that falls sort of like, I don't know, early in the year, or so it's all sort of like very specific, but it's like 50 words for chips in English. Oh, those are skin on chips. Those are soggy chips. So yeah, soggy chips are pretty good though.
Yeah, I think Japanese has a ton of onomatopoeia. So
onomatopoeia is the sound words, don't they?
yeah.
So like kasa and karakara.
The one that I
Which
use
is-
in Japanese a lot, because I have a tail, is boom boom. Boom boom maru. And boom boom means like, you know the movement that dogs... Well, actually any animal with the tail can do it, but like when they like shake it vigorously, it's like boom boom. It can even be like the sound for like bugs and their wings.
So it means to like move something very, very quickly, sort of like from side to side. Because my assumption there would be like, it's the sound it makes is in English. The sound it makes, so like sort of like something slapping together, like or clapping together would be like the sound, but in Japanese it's more like a description of the action making that sound.
So clapping's like pach pach. So and then some people will type it in text as like lots of 8s because hachi. 8 is hachi, so then like they'll use that in lieu of pach pach. Yeah, it's kind of cool to like also know onomatopoeia. Sometimes like when I'm translating, it's difficult because I do Japanese and English translation, so like Japanese to English or English to Japanese, right? It's easier to translate, in my opinion, English to Japanese because English is a lot more straightforward than Japanese to English, because from like the stuff that I've had to translate, it tends to be the case where Japanese has like a lot of descriptive words and a lot of like, sometimes it's like flair words, if that makes sense, where it's like you embellish your sentence so it sounds nice, but then if you do literal translating to English, it's like, why do you need all this like extra bits? So like English to Japanese, in my opinion, is a lot easier because it's like no, everything is needed.
So you can just like cut out a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, so when I'm doing Japanese to English, you know, using what I know, I think it's also like a cultural thing, but I think Japanese people do like that kind of like poetic embellishment, especially like when they're describing something, like they want it to sound nice, right? So when they do that, they add a ton of like imagery to the sentence, and at least like I'm pretty sure someone other than myself might be able to translate it like in a very flourished way into English, but if you want it to make sense to English speakers relative, like regardless of where they're from, I think a lot of it is kind of unnecessary. I do try to make sure like the imagery is similar, but it's really difficult to just be like, let's put everything that they say in one sentence, especially since like a Japanese sentence can be like multiple sentences into one thing. but it's still not like considered run-on in Japanese, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So it's like there's like multiple subjects in one sentence, but you can still keep it in one sentence.
Let's see. Where are we up to? Yes.
Yeah.
So we didn't have any questions, did we? The
One word is various sentences. I mean, yeah, sometimes. You can fit a lot more in 140 characters in Japanese than you can in English, that's for sure.
I'd like to see if I can. So I guess it's not in English, but English is one of those things where we kind of just like steal other people's words. Longer.
Yeah, context is very important.
And it's from
Definitely
Wales.
True.
Hopefully this isn't going to have indicated that my own stream is safe to watch by myself. No. No. Where is it? Here it is. Let's see if you can pronounce. Is that the right place? Is that the right place? No, that's a different place. Oh, I'm such a churl.
Why?
Longest place in Welsh. I gotta boggle your little fuck's mind. Had to hop
I
into your
think I
stream for a
know
second.
this word, but I forgot what it meant. But I think I've found it because I was interested in the world's longest word.
There is a place named longer than that. It's I think it's in New Zealand.
Oh, okay. It's so long.
So if I'm not mistaken, that's plan fair. So I know that. So basically, whenever you see a double L in Welsh, it's an H sound instead. I remember because I impressed a Welsh friend many years ago with being like, "Yes, I've read the book that you gave me. I've now learned the Welsh language in a night." When all I'd learned is like the fucking H sound. But yeah, if you see a double L, it's an HL sound. Clan.
Yeah, I'm not gonna try that.
Yeah, this is like a tourism attraction. I've been to this place. It's got a pronunciation underneath. Clan wir pu gin gil go ga u quern drob ul landus ilio gogogoch. I know how to do the gogogoch.
What does it mean?
I can find out. Not the longest name in the world.
I can tell you what it's called in Japanese.
C, H, and L are considered single letters in the language. It has 51 letters. I don't know if it does actually have it must have a meaning. Translation.
It's a place. It's the longest name for a village? Town?
Yeah, it's the name of like a station, I think. So it translates to St. Mary's Church in the hollow of White Hazel near a rapid whirlpool, and the Church of St. Tilcio near the Red Cave. That's a very specific one.
It's difficult.
That's interesting. Would Japanese have like a translation for the word saint? Because the saint is like so specific to like it's specific to sort of like Catholic and Christian words. That what would probably be the appropriate translation if there would be one in Japanese?
I mean, saint is seijin. Seijin.
So is that like an approximation, or is it just like a literal?
Like
the sort of like the
seijin is like holy person.
Ah, okay, yeah, that would probably be the best translation, wouldn't it?
But it is interesting that there's like it kind of sounds similar.
What is it? There is one place that I want to go to in Japan, and it's the burial mound of Jesus. Have you heard about that?
Oh yeah. There's one in Japan supposedly.
It's like in a weird place, and it was like supposedly put there by Jesus's Japanese brother, which is citation needed.
Yeah, I don't really know a lot of religious stuff, so I don't really know where that fits in and if it does fit in with anything, so I can't really comment on that. But there is a place where supposedly this, so there's this story that Jesus actually came to Japan at some point.
Yeah.
And then in lieu of Jesus, the person who did die was like some other person. And then like Jesus actually came to Japan and then just like had the rest of his life or something and just died.
But it from what I understand, like it might be like a sort of like a lost in translation of some early sort of like Christian missionaries that arrived in Japan, tried to bring Christianity to like this one particular place, and then died through whatever reason, and sort of like I guess his name was Jesus.
Yeah,
because he kept trying to say the word Jesus, and we're like, is that his name? so as I understand it, that might be the historical accuracy, but there's a lot of uniqueness in sort of like the Japanese villages that I've seen. Like there's very sort of like there's a lot of sort of like identity culture in a village in Japan. Like this is specific to this one particular village, which I guess is you might find anywhere, but it's almost like sort of like tribal culture in a way. Does that sound bad? Maybe not. But
I mean, I think anywhere like that, like any small group of people can kind of. I think when you have small groups of people, they tend to be close, but then that also means like they're more wary of outsiders.
I don't necessarily mean that sort of like the wary of outsiders, but I think that there tends to develop sort of like a specific cultural identity just around like a village, almost like sort of that. Say there's like a specific spot or tree or something that people have a shared knowledge of.
I see.
And then that gets incorporated into the village's identity, because obviously Japan has a character for everything in a way.
Oh yeah.
And that seems to be a lot more vocal in Japanese sort of like culture than say like what I've experienced in English culture. And I think that's nice. I think that's really cool that people have these it feels almost more attached to where you come from as a person. Like you have this specific thing that you can talk about. I don't know, I just think that's really cool. Like that. Like I would love to live in the village, or to have been born in the village where Jesus is buried.
Right. It's interesting. Like, yeah, there are interesting places like that too, where it's like really tiny, but then they are known for something really odd or like out of the blue.
Yeah, like there's the I don't know if you're familiar with Higurashi, the horror anime.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in England are like, I want to go to that village that it was based on, because it's apparently like just a regular village, but the guy who wrote it was like, this village is creepy, I'm going to base a horror anime off of it.
Right.
And that's now become kind of like the part of the identity of that village. Is sort of like, oh, it's partially based off of this one, so I guess that's our thing now.
Right.
I don't know, I think that's very cool about Japanese culture. It's like how quick to adapt to things they are.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, there is kind of that, and then like if you go to different areas, there might be like words specific to that area, so that's kind of neat. Like if you you know, if you study Japanese, like I think what most people study is like called the standard Japanese, but
Yeah.
if you actually look into it a lot more, you're gonna probably realize that almost every area in Japan has their own version of Japanese. And Standard Japanese tends to be used in Tokyo and like the area around Tokyo, but if you go outside of Tokyo, there's like the western region has their own dialects, and then like Okinawa has their own, you know, mixed language, and then the north has their own and stuff, and then like each part of that area has their like little differences, so you can sometimes tell where someone's from because of the way that they speak.
Yeah. So does Japan tend to not like have accents, say like the UK does, but they have more like an accent to the language rather? If that makes sense.
It is that, but it's also like words are completely different sometimes.
Yeah, so you might be saying, "Oh, I'm eating this one specific food," and the person from another language is like, or person from another area is like, "What the hell are you talking about?" And then you're like, you show them a picture of it or something, and they're like, "Oh, you mean this thing?"
Right. I use a little bit of like Western dialect just because of where I'm from.
Yeah. Well, I would say that you have like almost like an American or maybe like a Canadian sort of like twang, as we call it.
Oh, yeah, in English, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, in Japanese, sometimes I use words specific to like an area in Japan, and then, you know, I've mentioned it to people, and some people are like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "Wait, I thought that was standard Japanese," and it's funny. It's not. I guess like one example, it's like the phrase specifically translates directly to "your eyes are hard." It's me katai.
So me is eye, isn't it?
Yeah.
So katai is
Katai is hard.
Yeah, so it would literally just translate as like hard.
Yeah. But some people I've told that to are like, "What does that even mean? Like, your eyes are hard?" Like, what? Right?
That might, I have an assumption about what it would mean. So let me see if I get this right. Would it mean like you're giving someone like a mean look?
No.
Oh, that you're scowling at someone?
Nope.
Okay. I'm all out of ideas. Does it literally mean like you have hard eyes?
Huh?
Does it mean that you literally have hard eyes? You can't poke someone in the eye very well?
Right, it's not can't see you well either.
Okay. If you have hard eyes, is it even like related to your eyes?
Yes.
Okay.ちょっと待ってください。
It's not good eyes either.
If you have hard eyes, what would that imply? Does it mean that you look at something in a particular way? Like you're shrewd about something?
Nope. Nope.
I give up. 私はバカです。 Go on, tell me what it means.
Okay, it means that gloves are literal handbags, so it could be anything. So what it means is you don't sleep.
It means you don't sleep?
Yeah.
So you have like bags under your eyes?
No. Like you tell someone that they have hard eyes if there's someone that stays awake like for a long time. Like even past sleep time.
So you have like strong eyes?
Kind of.
Or you have like really, so you have like tough eyes, I guess. Like you.
I guess so. Yeah.
Ah, that's weird.
Same veins as nerves of steel. Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what we have in English that is sort of like that is like specific. Can't think of one. I got another name for you to pronounce though.
I know like English in the UK and English in the US are not like some people say things very differently in the UK. And my English is more from the US.
Yeah, you definitely have more of a like I said, you have an American sort of like twang, so you have this specific inflection in the way that you sound.
Yeah.
I think there is one that I can think of that is kind of like specific to the region that I live, or but it's the way in which people say our or me or yeah, because so like in Liverpudlian culture, which is around the area in which I crash landed, and so a lot of my programming comes from, the people use like specific possessives instead of for themselves rather than specifically using one for like a group. So they will say my dad or me dad rather than saying my, because we don't in Liverpool people tend to say they use me instead of my, but if you say something as me dad, it means either my father specifically or our father. So you just use one. You just use singular instead of plural.
What is the word that you typed out?
Oh, the word that I put in there. Sorry, been sticking around. So how would you pronounce that word?
I have no idea.
Give it a go for the lols.
Chol Mandali.
No, that's how I pronounced it the first time I saw it. How do you think? Well, given like your knowledge of English, how do you think you'd pronounce it? Like if you had to guess how it would sound.
I don't know.
So
weird.
the way you pronounce that word, which is spelled CHOLMONDELEY, for those who can't see it, is pronounced chumley.
Why? How?
Because England is a hellscape for languages. That's why. And it's like there's tons of places like that. I'm trying to think of another one. But we have this. It's usually really old places. So I'm trying to think of. So you have a word like Tintagel, which is literally how it's spelled. Tintagel. And it's pronounced the same way. That's a really old English word. But then you get chumley, which is an old English word that is spelled completely different from its pronunciation.
It just removes the second O and all E's.
So the way that you would spell it is like CHUMLEY at the most.
Right.
Then you've got words like Glendower, which is sort of like halfway between the two. So you've got the first part sounds like you would pronounce it GLYN. So in like older versions of English, Y is like this universal letter. So it's both a TH sound, Y by itself, and it's an I sound for an I. But the second half of it is dour. So you would assume that we pronounce that DOUR. But they do away with the OU and spell it with a W.
Why? Why?
Yeah. So I don't know, I think but Glendower is both a person name and a place name.
Mm.
So you can call someone is it a second name? I think it's a house name. Yeah. Because there's a university that was named after it in the UK. After that person. And then he got his head chopped off. That's the story. That's it.
Mercury says still not as bad as French.
Yeah, I've been watching Sarui a lot, and she's like, "Why does anybody want to learn French?" It's like the way that they translate the name, the horse whisperer in French is something like the man who stands at the ears of horses and talks. And it's like, why would anybody wish to speak this language? It is so useless. We put in way too many things.
I
I was
mean,
like, oh, sorry. You crazy.
Pomme de terre. Potato. Earth apple.
The fruit of the earth.
Yeah.
I
mean, I thought it was interesting that computer, you think like in other like Romance languages is still computer. In French it's like ordinateur.
Well, it's like in Chinese, Mandarin, I think it is, the like computer is electric brain that thinks. Because there's like multiple different translations of it, because you can translate any of those kanjis into like a similar thing. You can get thunderstorm brain, or like metal box brain, or it's like or thinking box, stuff like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. The word
the cool thing about
bird has none of the vowels.
The cool thing about Mandarin, though, is that apparently you can, if you were to learn modern day Mandarin, you could travel back in time to like 4,000 years ago and just still be able to speak and read Mandarin, because the language hasn't changed. Because it's not a case of the language adding new things to the language. You're just taking the existing things within the language and then adapting them so that to create a separate word, like Lego bricks.
Yeah. I've studied French and Mandarin actually, like just a little bit, so I can kind of understand how the like sentences are kind of structured. But yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, I think the hardest part for me was French, just because of the pronunciations that you don't really have in English or Japanese, you know? Even
like the one benefit that sort of like English has with like German and French is that they used to be both German and French. It used to be both German and French at one point, so
right.
We have the same sounds.
Right. Yeah, like Mandarin though, like is hard too because of pinging. Like the way that you're supposed to pronounce things is really specific.
Yeah, it's like you have to say sort of like, you could say shu or siu or something like, but if you say something that's pronounced like two words that have like different pronunciations regardless of how they're spelled.
Yeah.
And they can mean like two different things altogether.
Yeah, which it's like, it makes sense if you're reading like the Chinese characters, but it makes no sense if you're just reading it in like Roman English letters. And it's like, what? Xiou, what? You can sound it out in like 3 ways, and you're like, what? But it's
X
all
is a
spelled
weird.
right.
X is a weird one because it does make that weird. In English, it doesn't really have its own sound. It copies the sounds of others.
Yeah.
It makes an E and like an EC sound by pronouncing the letter.
Yeah. Right.
Or if used with something else, it becomes like a Z sound. So it's weird. It's depressing.
It's depressing.
I want X to have its own sound. But yeah, trying to think what else there is. So we were going to talk about tourism stuff as well, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I did say how, if you're gonna plan on visiting Japan anytime soon, be aware that, if you go, oh, well, I just want to go and have a short trip, well, you might end up having to just stay in one place for the whole time and then just go back home. So don't do that. Because there is that 14-day quarantine, and you do have to, like, have location services on your smartphone, so you'll have to check in.
The Japanese government wants to track you.
Yep.
To stop you spreading
And sometimes they'll call you. Well, actually, every day they'll call you once, and then they'll also ask you for your location multiple times, and then also they will ask you for your temperature and how you're feeling every day for that whole span of time.
What is... So, assuming the sort of like... Actually, that's interesting to sort of like question stuff, like, because one of the things that I've always wanted to do in Japan is go to like Disney Sea, but I haven't had the opportunity yet. And if you know anything about, or have been following anything that's been happening with sort of like the American parks, which are technically owned by a different company entirely. Disney Sea is licensed by Disney to the Oriental Land Company.
Yep.
Disney has been pretty much straight up like, how soon can we reopen? So what has, I don't know if you've followed it, but what have sort of like tourist attractions been like in Japan under COVID?
I mean, I know they're open because people have been going. I'm not sure like how busy they are, just because I pretty much kept away from crowds.
Yeah.
But just like in general, if you do use like public transit, you are definitely going to be like pretty close to other people, so I don't think you'll ever really be able to keep like, that's, what is it, like 6 feet or whatever.
Yeah. Because even at sort of like off-peak times, it was pretty packed in Japanese transit when I was there in like 2018.
Yep. So if you want to keep your distance, I suggest you don't really go on public transit, but obviously it's going to be cheaper if you're visiting. I mean, I think most people, as long as they're vaccinated and, you know, make sure their hands are washed and wearing a mask all the time, I think it's going to be fine. But of course, if you have, you know, autoimmune stuff, or like if you're immunocompromised, I don't know if it's the right time to be visiting.
So what is COVID still pretty big in Japan, would you say? Because in the UK, we're sort of like at this point of like, vaccinations are rolled out, COVID no longer exists, even though we've had like 60,000 diagnoses within the past 2 days.
Yeah, I feel like if you go out, people act like it's not a thing anymore. But then, of course, people do tend to wear masks over here, I think, like relative to some places.
Yeah, and obviously the masks were pretty commonplace even before COVID was a thing, because of like hay fever and just cultural sort of like aspects.
Well, people wear masks to like hide their faces and, you know, things like that. So it's not like a new thing for people to be wearing masks as much as some other cultures.
Not like in the UK, where it's just sort of like where criminals just are very blasé about what they do. Man, this is just 3 hours of me shitting on the UK today, isn't it?
Say something good about the UK.
You
no.
probably won't get murdered if you walk around that much. I don't know. York's pretty nice.
I mean, the language is fun. Right, at least, like, in my opinion, you know, I like the different pronunciations. Like, even in the UK, there's, like, you said you're from the northern area.
Yeah.
But there's, like, a bunch of variations, like, within the UK, just, like, from north to south and all that, so...
Oh, yeah. They tend to peter off, like, around the London area, and everyone sort of develops a specific language, or a specific accent around there. But, yeah, there's... Black Country accent, there's Liverpudlian, Manchester accent, Mancunian, there's the Warrington accent, which is kind of what I've got, because that's like the area in which... Oh no, I'm doxing myself. But that's basically a combination of the two. Because Warrington's in the middle between the two cities. There's the Newcastle accent, there's the Brummy accent, there's the Yorkshire accent, which, again, I sort of have because I live in the middle of all of them. But yeah, there's tons. There's literally tons, and that's not even about getting into, like, obviously Scottish and Welsh, and you can get, like, Towny Welsh and Deep Welsh. And Deep Welsh is the coolest name for an accent. And that refers to if you live in, like, really rural Welsh, in really, really rural Wales, where sort of, like, you are pretty far removed from even, like, big cities. And you have, like, just... It's almost like it is at that point a separate language, because even some Welsh people can't understand you. But yeah, I think that's the thing. Accent is like a big identity thing in the UK. So you can tell where you're from.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to be able to tell where someone might be from. I mean,
but
maybe
even then
that's
you get,
not...
Oh no, I remembered another one. There's plastic scousers.
What is that?
So, if you're from Liverpool, you're a scouser. And a scouse is like a particular type of dish, right? It's basically like made from... So Liverpool has always been historically like the poorest city in the UK. Out of the big cities, Liverpool's the poorest, and scouse was like the dish that everyone would make. It's believed to have come from Ireland originally, but it was made when it became scouse. It was like properly Liverpudlian, and it was made from just sort of like all the leftovers from whatever you had that week into a pot, and just sort of that was your end of week dinner. But a plastic scouser is someone who has a Liverpudlian accent but doesn't actually live in or has come from the city. So it's almost like an adopted accent that people have sort of like taken on, used so frequently that it's just become a separate accent in itself. So it's this weird, like, you can tell a plastic scouser which ones they are, like if you are a scouser, because it's like there's something off about your accent. What is it?
Right. So it's kind of like in Japan, if you're... So I don't have an issue with this, but so some people have this like strange it's not strange, I get where they're coming from, but there's this weird feeling of when you hear someone's dialect and it sounds off. You know, like so sometimes I hear like a person from Tokyo speaking in like the Western dialect, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of off. Like,
yeah.
And
That
like I
like...
think that like I don't have an issue with it. I just know that like, oh, maybe they're like practicing, or maybe they're not necessarily from the area, or like they want to learn it, so they're doing that. But there are some people who probably will tell you if they don't like it.
Yeah, it's kind of like how if you hear an American person playing a British person in an acting role, it's sort of like you're doing a specific type of British accent that's fairly inappropriate to whatever role you're playing. Because it's like this generic voice that's sort of like, hello, this is what a British person sounds like. Right. I'll use my credit card.
I also think it's funny that like in the US at least, there's this strange phenomenon where every royalty is like supposed to be British.
Yeah.
Like in movies.
Even though it's like you know, your country was set up to escape imperial tyranny.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like, I thought the US history was that the settlers of the US were kind of like outcasts and like used to be prisoners, or was it people running from the law or whatever.
Well, so in America, the first people to have left from England were the Puritans, who were escaping religious persecution by the I think it was Georgians, who were basically like they were some of the most sort of like audacious kings and queens that we had. I think it was just the king, but he was known for King James. Or was it? No, it wasn't King James. King James was a Puritan. There was this weird period where they flipped back and forth between being sort of like hedonist rulers, and then a Puritan ruler, and then a hedonist ruler, and then a Puritan ruler, and then someone who was just sort of like, I care for neither of these things. But yeah, they first left when they were going for to sort of escape religious persecution, because being a Puritan was seen as being like way too strict as a way to live. Like Puritans didn't believe in dancing or like singing. They basically believed in prayer and misery. And so they went to America, founded their own things, and then I think after the Spanish went over, the British basically started forming more colonies, and then obviously they had their own sort of like War of Independence, where they separated themselves from England entirely. And then we pretended like we were mates for years and years and years, and that we weren't afraid of the Americans. But then, Australia was this continent in the middle of nowhere that nobody wanted, except for the people who were already living there. And we decided in England that it was pretty good for sending prisoners to. So we used it as a penal colony. and then it just became a big city, a country. Well, I suppose it was already a country. We just made it our country.
I see.
Yeah.
Interesting. Religion is hard.
Yeah, it is.
It's interesting to like learn about all the different ones.
Well, religion in Japan's kind of like a whole different deal, isn't it? Because you have like Shinto birth rituals, westernized marriage rituals, and then like Buddhist funerals, don't you?
Yep.
Typically.
Yeah. I mean, there is Japanese marriage ceremonies. So
Yeah.
there are those. Oh, and the kimono that people wear for that is so beautiful. Anyway, that's another topic, I guess. But yeah, a lot of people do Buddhist burials. And since Japan's pretty small, right, relative to the amount of people, I think, cremation's like the main thing. And then when people get cremated, they right beforehand they have like, I forgot how many days, but it's like the last few days before you get cremated, like you get to spend with your family. I'm pretty sure it depends on the family and household. So at least like what I know is that like if someone passes away, they get like all nice and put into like a casket, right? And then you say your last goodbyes or whatever, but like you can spend like a couple days with them, and then you go to like a cremation facility and you get their, you know, remnants, right? So when you're getting the remnants, you actually use chopsticks. So like you use hashi to like pass the bones to like each of the family members.
Yeah, I've heard this because a friend of mine who lived in Japan for about 15 years and is currently like stuck outside of the country. He told me a story of sort of like how when it was like a totally different experience for him, because obviously like a Western funeral is a pretty behind the curtain sort of thing, if you get what I mean, where we don't really see like the preparation of the body or unless it's deliberately an open casket affair. You probably won't even see the person,
right?
Other than sort of like the final moments of like the coffin, as it were. And he was like totally shocked at when he had to go to like a relative at the time's funeral, where he was sort of like, yep, there's a I can't say for myself, but I guess he described it as sort of like the remains of a human skeleton, and everyone's just sort of like picking them up, or like these fragments of bone, just sort of like pretty, I won't say blasé, but obviously sort of like as though it was like they had done this before, and it's sort of like pretty wild for a Western person to think like we wouldn't like really even consider like touching a dead body. And obviously I don't mean that sort of like in a sort of like, how could you, that's sacrilegious, but it's sort of like our own perceptions of it, sort of like almost like either there's something dirty about a dead body, or like there's something sacred, I guess, like you don't touch it. But in the same way, sort of like I can totally understand sort of like this is the final remains of someone, and of course you would want to like keep them if there's like I don't know, what is the, or like what's your own perspective of that?
Like keeping someone? What do you mean?
Because obviously we keep stuff like ashes, but and I can't speak for like sort of what the final process of a Japanese funeral is. Sort of like once everything's been done with, like the ceremony is over, I know sort of like the visual images.
Yeah.
Like you get like a white box, don't you?
Yeah.
With some of the remains in, but I don't know sort of like what else entails into it, other than sort of like I presume that goes onto a shrine of some kind.
It kind of depends. I think some people actually keep the ashes afterwards, like just at home or something. It kind of depends, but at least like from what I know, there are, you know, those like stone, what are they called? I am suddenly forgetting a word. Tombstones? There's like tombs, right?
Yeah.
And then there's like a part in there where like you can put the little like jar of ashes into. Of course, like if you don't have one of those tombs, you don't have anywhere to put it, but most families tend to have like their family tree's tomb, and that's where you would put all of your ancestors' ashes. Although, you know, there are people who have different religions in Japan too, so I'm actually not really sure. Like, I know a lot of Catholic people in Japan. I don't actually know what they do for burials here, because it's kind of hard to like find a place where you can just like bury the whole body.
Yeah, because obviously is that kind of a product of sort of like Japan's, because Japan does have sort of, especially in cities, sort of like a real estate sort of issue. That's why sort of like Tokyo built up rather than sort of like necessarily building further out.
Yeah.
And presumably having like a plot of land that you aren't allowed to sort of meddle with isn't necessarily going to gel with certain Japanese sensibilities. If that doesn't sound weirdly bigoted in a way when I'm thinking about it, but sort of like if it doesn't, because obviously like in Western culture, like graveyards are considered sacred. Like you don't mess around in them. They're a place to be very respectful. You're not supposed to be loud in them. It's like you're disrupting the dead people who are there. And I don't know if there's sort of like the same is there the same reverence for sort of like a graveyard or like a Japanese equivalent of a graveyard? I guess. I don't know. It's one of those things that's sort of like it's so specific to Japanese culture because obviously there's Bon Festival or Obon, is it?
Yeah.
Or is it? Yeah. Which is specifically the Japanese sort of Day of the Dead, I guess, or Time of the Dead is probably more accurate. Or maybe I'm being ignorant again, and actually that's kind of an interesting talking point, sort of like because we're on the subject. What is Obon? Or Obon? Sorry, I never know how to pronounce that word.
It's kind of basically a period in time where human ancestral spirits come back home to just kind of chill. And the whole thing is, to celebrate like what's come before you, right?
So it is more in keeping with say like Dia de los Muertos. So
kind of.
Even though we have like this perspective in the West of like, oh, it's thinking about the dead, you're not really thinking about it in that sense. You're thinking about ancestors who have passed on and are now coming back to spend time with you.
Yep.
That's interesting. Because we don't really have that in the UK because I guess in America as well, because we would associate that with like necromancy, I guess, and obviously necromancy was considered black magic.
Right.
And so like even like communicating with the dead was considered taboo, and now it's considered normal for some reason.
Right.
It is interesting to sort of see an entirely different perspective on like life events. Because we can compare like sort of similar traditions, like naming babies, or sort of like I forget what it is, but there's like a specific Japanese event where you celebrate births, isn't it? Or is that around New Year's? Sorry,
You mean like coming of age?
I guess.
Because there's the coming of age ceremony. Well, okay, so there's Shichigo-san.
Mm-hmm.
And that's celebrating your 3rd year, your 5th year, and your 7th year of life.
Yeah, because those are like historically linked to sort of things of survival, aren't
Yeah.
they? Like, because obviously, like at the 3rd year, you'd be considered, I guess this person's strong enough to have survived, so it's a good chance they're gonna live to another point of time. At least that's how I've always been led to understand it.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day where, I mean, it's not that, like, it's better now, but obviously, like, back in the days when there wasn't as much medical knowledge and, help, of course, babies would, die early because of some sort of, disease or maybe famine or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, the third and the fifth and the seventh year are like considered age, like celebratory ages. And basically one of the things that people do nowadays is take like pictures of their kids when they're those ages. So it's kind of like, oh look, you're 3, like let's put you in these like cute kimono outfits, and then like the big one is like when you are of legal age, which is 20 now, but apparently they're pulling it down to 18. So I don't know if that's gonna change. Like I don't know if they're gonna suddenly change the age ceremony to 18 or if they're just gonna keep it at 20. But it's like when you can finally drink and whatever.
But that's one of the things that always kind of like amazed me in Japan was sort of like when I bought like Strong Zero at the convenience store, they obviously age check you, but the age check wasn't, oh, please show me your ID. It was, please confirm that you're 18.
Right.
It took away which is something that we don't have in the UK. Like in the UK, the responsibility is on the person selling, not on the person buying.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't we do that in the UK? It's like, if a person is deliberately trying to deceive another, like it's not that person's responsibility to be not deceived.
Yeah,
I mean, I can understand it. It's about sort of like stopping kids getting their hands on stuff they shouldn't have. But at the same time, the Japanese version seems to make Japanese society in general, I guess, seems to have a lot more emphasis on personal responsibility rather than in the UK, where it's responsibility is handed off to one person in particular and they take the fall if something were to go wrong.
Yeah, I don't know. I do know that a lot of people don't necessarily have like ways to, like, they don't have ID cards as much. So that might also be why people don't like ask you for one. Especially if someone, you know, living in Japan has never left the country, there's like no reason to get any ID. Really?
Yeah, a passport, or if you don't drive. I don't know if I assume they have the sort of like ages on driver's licenses in Japan.
Yeah, they do have driver's licenses. You can get like a license just to show that you exist, but it's not like required.
Yeah, it's very similar to stuff like in the UK, where it's sort of like most people would use their, like, I primarily use my driver's license or occasionally my passport if I don't have my driver's license. But that's because sort of like, again, in the UK you are expected to have some form of identification on you at all times, which is weird. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that sort of like, I guess that Japan has this perspective that sort of like, if you want to drink under the age, even though it's technically illegal, it's your responsibility, and it's not the person selling the alcohol to use responsibility. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe it's also just because of like crime rate stuff. Like you don't really. Oh. The thing is, like, I don't trust crime rates that much just because like there's so many that maybe people aren't reporting.
Yeah.
But you know, from just like basic living, I don't feel like there's like that many people who are like hurt because of someone who might be underage getting their hands on like a thing of alcohol, maybe.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about sort of like it being in the UK is the idea that it could impair their reasoning, and people can take advantage of kids through that way, obviously.
Yeah.
And that's a perfectly sound reasoning.
Yeah, there's like a lot I could probably say about that topic, but it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
And also, before we go too far, I do want to say, like, if you want to know what people in Japan do before, like, a whole, or, you know, after someone passes away, Departures is a good movie.
Oh, okay. I'll check that one out.
Also called Okuribito in Japanese.
Yeah, I was looking at a movie yesterday called Ride Your Wave. I haven't watched it yet, but it's a Japanese movie about a woman's grieving process, by the looks of it. I'll have to see more about it because I still haven't seen Your Name. Or like anything. I haven't watched anime in ages. The last thing I watched was Evangelion. So,
right. Yeah, I think the last thing I've watched is the first season of Jujutsu Kaisen and like Kemono Jihen, because they're both like related to yokai. Oh, another thing is, I think if you do go, and I hope if you're trying to learn about a different culture, that you find other people in that culture to talk to, but don't limit it to like one person, because everyone has different perspectives.
Yeah. That's definitely sort of like a takeaway. Is of like, yeah, a country is not one specific person or thing. Especially sort of like in like places like England, which is sort of like pretty. There's a pretty big sort of like north-south divide, as we call it.
Right.
It's like the north is very different from the south. I don't know. I guess we should be wrapping it up, maybe.
Yeah, I am gonna have to go to bed soon.
Yeah. But yeah, okay. This has been super fun and super interesting to talk with you finally in person, bot to fox. Hopefully this hasn't just been a rambling of me sort of like I don't know. Hopefully this has been interesting for people to listen to.
Yeah.
I hope it's been interesting for you, Ven, to talk with me. We'll have to do more of a. Maybe we should do another one where it's more. You can ask the questions and I answer about sort of like horrible British life.
I guess we could do that. I mean, I like, heavy topics too. It's just like, I think the only thing we should probably make sure we don't do is just like make like really deterministic sentences or like say things that like, because things change and we don't know everything, obviously.
Yeah, it's definitely been sort of like a refreshing to have sort of like a cultural exchange, as it were.
And I'm not like super knowledgeable about Japan as much as I wish I was. I do know a lot about Utsushio, but that's because it's my world, so.
Yeah. But yeah, that's I think it's kind of the similar thing for me though. It's sort of like I've lived in England all my life, and I basically know nothing about it outside the region that I live. And anything else is a filthy lie. But yeah, this has been fun. I hope people got something out to listen to this. We're definitely gonna have to do another one of these. I think just try and I'll try and be a bit more streamlined. I don't know. Hopefully, I haven't been rambling.
Mercury says it was interesting.
Oh, thank you, Mercury. But yeah, I guess if you want to check me out again, you can follow me over at Automatic Mech on Twitter. I post updates for when I stream. You can follow me here. We're 15 people away from reaching 50 followers, and then it's on to affiliate. Go follow Ven and get ready for VTuber of the week next week. I might be streaming later today, trying to finish off Catherine, maybe.
Oh yeah.
And then what else is there? Yeah, I'll have a new streamer update at the end of the week, or on Sunday.
Nice.
Yeah. So do you want to do a sign off, Ven, just so people can find you by watching my VODs, if anyone's going to watch these?
Well, someone might. So anyway, I'm Ven.
Yeah. Thank you, Mercury, for following.
Yay. Thank you for following. And well, anyway, so I'm Ven. You can follow me on Twitter and on Twitch under the same name, Silvageca, which is Silvageca. So that's what I go by like almost everywhere. So like also on Instagram if you're interested in my art. But anyway, hopefully if we do like a chatting collab, we'll have like a more narrowed down topic.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have to. This one's just sort of like been more of a testing the waters sort of thing.
Yeah.
But hopefully it's been fun for everyone involved. It's been fun for me. I've loved talking to you, Ben. It's so nice to speak to someone finally. And yeah, I guess I'll end my stream here. But yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. I'm Mysterious Android X, aka Max, signing off. See you guys in the next stream. Goodbye, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Bye. If you're watching a VOD, thank you. Hope you come to my next stream or Max's or both.
I'm still here on Ven's stream, technically.
Yeah. Yep, I might. Well, anyway, I do art streams. I do sometimes. I do like co-op stuff, like Risk of Rain 2 and Monster Hunter Rise. So if you're watching this and those are interesting,
we definitely have to do a like an actual game together at some point.
Oh yeah, that would be fun too.
Yeah, people play games on this website, don't they?
Hmm?
People play games on this website, don't they?
No. Yeah, and obviously I can always do like, you know, a drawing stream and you can just chat or something. That's also like a thing that we can do, like whatever works and whatever seems fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you gonna end your stream or are you still going?
Okay. Well, anyway, thank you for watching. See you again soon. Bye.
Bye. Okay.